Hi there, I'm Marianne Taylor, the House Detective. What I thought I would do in this video is just discuss the different types of heritage listing there is in Australia. Now, it's really confusing. There's lots of different registers and I often get people asking me to clarify what the different listings are. So I thought I'd just put a video together about this and very quickly discuss some of the main heritage listing types in Australia. Now, what do I even mean by heritage listing? There's a variety of different types of legislation and registers or lists or planning overlays that protect heritage buildings in Australia. These have statutory powers, which means they can legally stop certain things being done to these places. There's also reference lists or lists that record important properties, but they have no actual power to protect them. So in Australia, there is many types of heritage listing. These include World Heritage Listing, National Heritage Listing, Commonwealth Heritage Listing, State Heritage Listing, local government heritage registers. Although there's this huge range of different registers, they have a number of things in common. The overarching thing in common is that they're designed to protect and conserve places of importance for future generations. That's the main thing. They can also include almost any type of place. So gardens, spaces, places that just have archaeological potential, bridges, buildings, natural landscapes. You think of it, it can probably be on there. So they're not limited to just protecting buildings. So what these lists are designed to do is choose representative examples of particular types of place and protect those so they survive as evidence for the future. So these are special or remarkable examples of their type. That's why, in theory, they're added to these registers. So that's why not just every old house or old building or beautiful landscape is added to these registers and protected. It's a selective process to ensure that there can still be some development and progress and evolution in our cities and countries and towns, but some key examples are protected for the future. Regardless of the fact that there's all these different types of heritage listings, they all require places to meet particular criteria to be included. So a place just because it's old can't necessarily be added to these registers. They have to meet a number of specific criteria. And it's a broad range of criteria for each of these, although they're at different levels. So these places need to demonstrate historical significance, scientific significance, aesthetic significance, social significance, architectural significance. They have to be rare or endangered or otherwise special or unique. They can be connected to a famous person. They can represent a particular style of place. What I'm going to do is just very quickly, at a very high level, take you through each of these types of listings. So, World Heritage Register. To be included on this list, a place or a building has to be of importance to the entire history of the world. It has to help tell the story of the history of the world, okay? So that's quite a massive criteria, but we actually have a heap of places on the World Heritage Register here in Australia. Many of them are environmental places such as Fraser Island, the Gondwana rainforest remnants, the Daintree rainforest. In terms of built places, there's a collection of convict-related structures all around Australia that are on the World Heritage Register because they help tell that story about colonial Britain and sending the convicts all around the world and how that established places. There's also the exhibition building in Melbourne, and that's considered to be of significance to the history of the world because this was an exhibition where people travelled from all over the world to display different items of interest, and people travelled from all over the world to view these, and these buildings can be found all over the world in all different countries. Next level, we have National Heritage Register. Now, the criteria, the overarching criteria for these places is that they help tell the story of the history of our country. So they have to be of importance to the entire country. So these range, again, there's lots of First Nations examples, there's natural environment examples, and there's also built heritage along with a range of other structures. So one example might be former Government House in Sydney. This helps tell the story of the European history of Australia because this is a physical reminder of the first settlement established there, the penal colony of Port Jackson. The Qantas hangar in Longreach. This helps tell the foundation story of one of Australia's most recognisable brands and businesses. Brewarrina Aboriginal fish traps. These are thousands of years old and they're evidence of First Nations' incredible engineering feats, telling the entire story of our nation. So many other examples, national parks, shipwrecks, just a huge range. But the common theme is they all tell the story of Australia. Next up, you have a slightly different national list. So this is the Commonwealth Heritage Register. Now these are places that are important to the history of Australia, but they're on land that's owned by the Commonwealth or federal government. So this includes things like Defence Force buildings, general post offices that remain on federally owned land, and any other government building that is of significance to the entire country. Then we get down to state heritage registers. So we have the Queensland Heritage Register here in this state, and every other state also has some form of heritage register. Now, filtering down again to the next level, these are places that reflect and help tell the story of the history of the state. So in Queensland, for a place to be on the Heritage Register, there's a number of different criteria. They have to be of importance to the entire state. So if you're looking at a pretty old house that was built in a Brisbane suburb, chances are it would never be added to the State Heritage Register because it is not of significance to the entire state's history. Now, there are obviously exceptions to this where if it was the home of someone who was important to the entire state, or it's a really uncommon design that is the only one in Queensland or something like that. It has to be remarkable to actually make it onto the Queensland Heritage Register. Now, having said that, some of the earlier places added to the State Heritage Register, in my opinion, probably don't meet that criteria, but they're much more stringent about that these days when assessing places that have been nominated. Next level down is local heritage registers. Now these are lists maintained by local governments. So in Brisbane, we have the Brisbane City Council Heritage Overlay. What I mean by overlay effectively is that it's not a static list of places, it's recorded via mapping. For a place to make it onto the Brisbane City Council Heritage Register, it needs to somehow help tell the story of Brisbane. So this is a much more locally focused collection of places. So there's thousands of places on the Brisbane City Council Heritage Register. There's still a number of different criteria and the places have to meet at least one of those criteria. However, overall, the place has to, in some way, help tell the story of Brisbane and its origins, or provide an interesting example or a unique example of some aspect of the place's history, or be connected to a person who was of importance in the history of Brisbane. As a property owner in Brisbane or Queensland, the only two registers you're ever probably going to have to worry about is the Queensland Heritage Register and your local government one. If you're in Brisbane, the Brisbane City Council Heritage Overlay. You're very unlikely to own a property that is on either the World or the National Heritage Register, and you definitely won't have one on the Commonwealth Register because they have to be owned by the federal government, so therefore it wouldn't be yours. So there you have it, a very quick snapshot of all the different types of heritage protection in Australia. I hope you have learnt something from that, and if you have any questions, please add them to the comments below and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching.